Hello and welcome to episode 117 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, today as we record just so happens to be the 3-year anniversary of our announcement that I'd be joining the show as co-host. So happy 3 years of podcasting together.
Happy 3 years. I think a mini cupcake is in order for both of us at some point this week. Yeah, honestly, just joining you each week, being able to talk the world of Apple TV is like a highlight for my week. Hopefully a highlight for some listeners out there as well. And really, you think over the last few years how much we've covered, right? The growth of Apple TV Plus, Apple TV 4K, what's happening there, home theater mode with HomePods, the launch of Apple Vision Pro, and so much more. So it has really been a fun time. Some software suggestions that have come into reality as well during our time. Yeah, really, really excited for the next 3.
Yeah, here's to a great 3 years and many, many more. As you said, we've been covering the Apple Vision Pro since it came out. It's in one of the big stories of our time podcasting. And you have a little update on your setup that I think you wanted to share this week. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, after the last few weeks where I said I hadn't been using Apple Vision Pro as much, this past week I've transitioned to getting back to regularly using it, which I'm really, really happy about. But one reason that has really helped in that transition is a mod that I picked up. It's 3D printed from a Spanish company called Infinity One. And it's their air cover, which basically replaces the light seal and allows you to get closer to the lens, increase your field of view, but also it doesn't block the sides of your vision, and it feels far more freeing than I ever imagined it would. It was a bit of a risk picking this up, but I can say after the last week using it, that I think it's what Apple should have shipped with rather than the light seal, which sounds kind of crazy because of the immersion and especially the environments, and it maybe being a little bit counterintuitive with that. But I really love the experience with this modification. Even for watching films, I wasn't too sure. I thought it was going to be the purist. I watch a lot of my films at night anyway, films and TV shows. So that worked out quite well. And a bonus that I didn't expect to even think about is because you don't have that light seal, you have light spillage from the high-res displays in the Apple Vision Pro. And that spillage is actually quite productive in the sense that there's enough light, especially in pure darkness, for the Apple Vision Pro to be able to track your hands, which I think was probably a happy accident. I'm really loving it. I know you've really had no complaints with regard to how the Apple Vision Pro experience is for you. And I hadn't up until I tried the Infinity One air cover mod. Was really excited when Federico wrote about it recently on Mac Stories. Ordered it around the same time. Finally got it. And I would highly, highly recommend the Infinity One air cover mod to anyone that's thinking of picking up an Apple Vision Pro. Either you already have one or you're thinking of picking one up in the near future when it rolls out internationally.
Very cool. High praise for sure. I think what we're all hoping to eventually get to, of course, is less VR and more AR with these products. And it sounds like that's really what this add-on does, is it gives you back your peripheral vision, helps you feel less cut off from the world, less of that kind of binocular feeling that you get when you're in the Apple Vision Pro with the light seal.
I think that was the big thing for me. I wear it on the couch, and I'm normally next to some family members. When I'm wearing it on the couch, they're watching whatever they're watching on TV, and I'm watching whatever I'm watching on Apple Vision Pro. And because that light seal isn't there, I'm able to glance over, and they're able to see more of my facial features and just that quick kind of glance and that interaction, whereas you just don't get that with the light seal. So I think that's a big part of it as well. As much as the persona was a good idea for the outer screen display to be able to give you that interaction, looking back on it over the last few months, I'm not too sure if it really hit the marks that Apple wanted to. So yeah, this is, for many different reasons, a must-have.
Well, I have to say, between you and Federico, I'm tempted to give it a try. We're going to leave a link in the show notes for anyone else who wants to give it a try with their Apple Vision Pro. I may be following that link myself before too long. A nice little Apple Vision Pro tip to start off our episode this week. But of course, we have lots to cover on this episode. We're going to recap Apple Original Space Conspiracy Series Constellation. We're going to share our predictions for Apple's Let Loose event. And we're going to return to Las Colinas with this week's highlight, Acapulco Season 3. Let's start there.
It's time to reconcile past mistakes and exciting new beginnings. In the present story, older Maximo finds himself returning to Las Colinas he no longer recognizes, whilst in 1985, younger Maximo continues his climb up the ladder of success, whilst potentially jeopardizing all the relationships he's worked so hard to build.
It was 1985, and Las Colinas was the spot.
What's up, Memo? Did you put a window in here? I wanted to give the illusion of light. Don Pablo hired my sister, Dulce, to help with the party. What if Don Pablo picks her instead of me? I can see through this innocent act of yours.
I suggest you back off.
More twists and turns were still to come. Shall we?
Do I have a choice?
No.
Of course, a welcome return to Las Colinas with Acapulco Season 3. Once again created by Austin Winsberg, Eduardo Cisneros, and Jason Schumann, starring, of course, Eugenio Derbez and Enrique Arizon as Maximo, headlining an ensemble cast that I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit, Devon. Of course, that ensemble cast includes new reoccurring guest stars, Jamie Camille from Schmigadoon, and Cristo Fernandez, who we've seen previously in Ted Lasso, of course, a previous guest on this very podcast. We've both seen the first 2 episodes that are available this week. Give me a bit of a breakdown of where we're coming back into the story of Acapulco and, of course, Maximo.
Well, back in 1985, of course, Maximo is finally enjoying that promotion that he's been working so hard for. He's earned his spot as Don Pablo's kind of assistant or protege to one day hopefully take over his job at the hotel. And at the same time, he's also started his relationship with Julia, another goal that he's had for as long as we've known Maximo. So really, at the beginning of Season 3, he's on top of the world here because he's accomplished what we've seen him try so hard to do these past 2 seasons. But then we fast forward to the present day. Of course, older Maximo is in a very different spot than where we find him at the beginning of Season 3. Really, I think the first 2 seasons, we've come to believe that Maximo kind of has it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And now in Season 3, we're realizing that, okay, this guy's got some serious flaws and there's some bad things that are going to happen between 1985 and now, some kind of missteps, I think, along the way in his life. So yeah, it's a really interesting juxtaposition, and I'm really excited about the structure of the show and the way it leans into that and the way those 2 timelines feed into each other. I will say I'm happy that this is a 2-episode premiere because I feel like they really gave us, with the first episode, that warm, fuzzy feeling of being back in Acapulco, very classic Acapulco, just the antics of Maximo. He makes a promise to one person and then he has to help out somebody else in a way that conflicts with that first promise, and we have to watch him work it out, almost like a cartoon in a way. But then the second episode, I feel like, is when the season really starts to pick up and it's like, okay, here we go, we're back at it. Because the thing about Acapulco is that, especially with these 2 storylines going at the same time, it can really surprise us in some fun ways and unexpected ways. And I feel like they really start to lean into that, especially in that second episode. So I'm glad that there's 2 coming out this week, and I would definitely recommend that you watch them back to back to get both a taste of what we've come to expect from Acapulco, but also some of the innovations and the new storylines that are going to be coming in here in season 3 as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, of course, that continues, because the last couple of seasons, it felt like Maximo was really kind of relaying the stories that he'd learned from, and he kind of exuded confidence, like someone that had learned everything and was, this complete character, of course, very successful now looking back, And it's interesting to see his character become someone that is fully living and breathing and more rounded in that sense. He's not a perfect character by any means. And I do love the fact that you have that heaviness that comes in, but it's juxtaposed against some of the things that I always thought were the highlights for this show. You get a real kind of feeling of being away, being on holiday for a little bit, because it really feels like you're taken away. You're introduced to all of these different characters within Las Colinas and Maximo's early days. And one of the things that always stuck out for me were the musical numbers. You have the two performers that do all of these different covers. This time on episode 2, we get a rendition of Cold as Ice, which is turned into a marketing play for ice creams in Las Colinas, which is an early highlight. So you have that levity as well. But you're right, things get quite deep here.
I love the way that they balance those two things. How you can be watching Maximo learn a life lesson in one scene, and then in the next scene you've got the singers, or you've got Memo running across the screen and making you laugh or something like that. It really is, I feel like they package the whole thing together in a way that it's very palatable and enjoyable, but at the same time, I do think there's some substance to it for sure. And so the question's going to be, as life is trying to teach Maximo these lessons in 1985 and he's reflecting on them now, is he going to choose to learn them the second time around and make better decisions? That's what I'm really interested to see. But of course, it's not all about Maximo. There are a lot of other characters in the story as well that it's fun to catch up with. You've got Julia, played by Camila Perez, who's really growing her design career. That's going to be wonderful to see. Maximo's mom, Nora, is adjusting to married life, which is just a hilarious storyline to watch. Sarah's getting back out in the world after the heartbreak that we saw her face in the last season. Memo's growing in his relationship with Lorena while dealing with Lupe's meddling. Lupe's one of those characters who, anytime she appears on screen, you know you're about to laugh. And I love her presence on the show and her relationship with Memo, the way it's played out so far. Chad, played by Court Overstreet, is out on his journey of self-discovery, but he won't be gone for long. We'll learn what happened there. That's going to be exciting. And then, of course, Diane, who is played by Jessica Collins, is navigating a new financial partnership at the hotel with Mr. Vera, played by Jamie Camille. Love his addition to the series as well. So lots going on in Acapulco, lots of characters to love, and I'm excited to see where things go with them.
Yeah, I think, Devon, we just fell in love with this show when it first debuted. It's got better every season. I think this is going to be going along the same steps. I'm so happy that we got season 3, and hopefully we get many more seasons to come, because something I really love about this show is just how universal it is, especially in the sense that it's a bilingual comedy. And one thing that I love is how this isn't a show that you can passively watch, unless, of course, you are fluent in both Spanish and English. It's something that you have to, put the phone down, really just allow yourself to be lost in this world and in the story. And that is something that I think is rare in this streaming world that we live in, because it really does force you to, just allow yourself to be lost in this bright and beautiful world. Of course, you've got to learn from the stories, but more importantly, you'll feel like you went on a vacation for 30 minutes every week when it airs on Apple TV+. And of course, the first 2 episodes of Season 3 are available to watch now across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Really happy to see Acapulco return.
For sure. Another thing we're really happy about is Apple's Let Loose event, which is coming next Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific. It'll be available to watch on Apple.com and YouTube. But of course, the best way to watch it is in 4K HDR and spatial audio from the TV app across iPhones, iPads, Apple Vision Pro, and Apple TV 4K. I'm excited. This will be my first Apple event to watch in Apple Vision Pro, Sigmund, and I'm really, really looking forward to sitting in that big old theater and just taking it all in.
Yeah, great point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, definitely the theatre for this one. Interestingly, before we get into our predictions for this event, I wanted to shed a little bit of light on a conversation we had just last week, because we were talking about display technology. We were talking about OLED versus mini LED and how would mini LED work on an iPad Air compared to OLED on the Pro, and is there a big enough difference, and what are the pros and cons? Well, we can kind of throw that out, because it turns out that what we're expecting from Ross Young, who is a display analyst, very in on the know on the display industry, is that mini LED will not be coming to the iPad Air after all. Instead, it looks like iPad Air will come with an LCD panel, which makes last week's conversation kind of a moot point with regard to what we'd both go for given the choice. We've also heard from Mark Gurman this past week about the possibility of the new iPad Pros being powered by an M4 chip, and the idea that there's significant software-based upgrades coming to the Pro models. But with all of that out of the way, it is time for our let loose predictions. We have 4 regular picks worth 1 point each, and our out there pick, which is worth 3 points. Without further ado, and I'm going to say that we do this in order of how we see this event panning out. I'm going to kick off things with Tim Cook saying a good morning to everyone. And before getting into the new hardware, let's talk about Apple Vision Pro. Because, of course, it's available in the US, hasn't yet gone anywhere outside of the US, not even Canada. And we're, of course, expecting some kind of international rollout before WWDC. And I think this is the time in order to announce such a rollout. So my first regular pick is that Apple Vision Pro will receive an international rollout announcement at the top of this event. What do you think?
That makes so much sense, and I can't believe that I didn't think of it. Apple is trying to get the Apple Vision Pro out in the world. We've only seen it in the US so far, except for those of you who flew across the ocean to get one or had it shipped across the ocean. And yeah, this would be the perfect opportunity to get it in more people's hands, or at least get it on people's minds before WWDC, have a date in mind of when they can order it and pick it up. But of course, the star of the show, we're thinking, is going to be the new iPad Pros. That's what everyone's all riled up about. What exactly they're going to look like, what exactly they're going to be like. So I'm going to use my first prediction to say that the new iPad Pro is going to feature an always-on display in standby mode. I love this feature on my iPhone, and of course the iPhone's had OLED for quite some time, and it got the LTPO technology a couple of years ago to enable an always-on display. And so I'm hoping that the iPad Pro will get that same technology, so that when I prop it up on the side of my desk, it's not just a blank screen sitting there, but it can actually show me some widgets and useful information there.
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea of that. That might tie in nicely with some conversation we'll be having a little bit later. Now, with regard to the functionality, I'm going to go straight ahead and say cameras, right? The iPad Pros especially have always had really nice cameras, and whilst I am not that person that would necessarily take out a big iPad Pro and start shooting, they are actually quite handy bits of hardware to have with that big display for viewing what you're shooting, which is something that I can't see them not doing this time round. And with everything else being able to shoot spatial video over the next couple of years, it makes sense, in my opinion, that the new iPad Pro will also gain the ability to shoot spatial video. So that is my pick. My second regular pick is that the new iPad Pro will have the ability to shoot spatial video.
I like this pick. I like that more and more devices are going to be able to shoot spatial video. We're hearing rumors that maybe even the base model iPhone will be able to do it this year with kind of a rejiggered camera alignment. The iPad Pro, of course, was the first iOS device to have a LiDAR sensor on it way back in the day. That was an interesting development. Of course, LiDAR is an important part of spatial photography and videography. And so I could definitely see them, as long as they're willing to just add a second camera lens on the iPad Pro, then it would have everything that it needs to start shooting spatial video and really get that format more and more popularized. So yeah, this one makes a lot of sense. I have a prediction about cameras on the iPads, but I want to move to the front side of the iPad, and I want to talk about the iPad Air.
Okay.
Alongside the iPad Pro, we're expecting an updated iPad Air, and I am going to predict that the front-facing camera on the new iPad Air is located on the long side. This is something we've been asking for the longest time on a variety of iPads. Lots of people use iPads in almost a laptop configuration now, or even if they're using an iPad handheld, a lot of them get turned into landscape mode for video calls. And when it's in that mode, you really want the camera as high as it can be. So we saw this with the base model iPad a couple of years ago. It's the only iPad that has the camera on the long edge on the front. We've heard rumors that it's going to happen on the Pros, but I'm predicting it's going to happen on the Airs as well. I think hopefully by the end of this year, the entire iPad lineup will have moved to this arrangement for the front camera, but I can't see them doing it on the Pros and not the Airs. So my prediction is that it's going to happen on the Airs as well, that the front camera will be on the long side next Tuesday when the new iPad Air is announced.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the one thing that I think has been a challenge for anyone that started a video call on an iPad, beyond, I think, the base model from last year, is where the front-facing camera is positioned. So it'll be nice to actually be able to look into the camera this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And I would be shocked if they do not do this, considering the precedent that's been set last year. Now, Devon, let's talk accessories, because accessories are a big part of the iPad story that I think is often overlooked, and especially with the introduction of the Magic Keyboard and, of course, Apple Pencil. But the Magic Keyboard, when it was introduced with the trackpad, it really made a big difference in terms of the usability and the overall experience, almost going down that laptop mimic route, but never really fully going all the way into like MacBook territory. There have been rumors that this new Magic Keyboard is going to be slightly different and go down a possible MacBook-like chassis built of aluminium. I'm excited about this, but I'm going to go a little bit further with my pick here, because not only do I think we're going to see this new Magic Keyboard in a new form, but I think we're going to see a return of something to this keyboard. People have been talking about function keys for a while and the lack of function keys. But I wonder if, rather than function keys, we get, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and I can see you're waiting for me to say it, I think we're going to get the long-awaited return of the touch bar. There have been zero rumours of this. The touch bar, of course, was retired a good few years ago. It was on a MacBook Pro that I had, I think my last Intel MacBook Pro. And I think, whilst the touch bar didn't really work out on MacBooks, I think because the iPad is a computer that is predominantly based on touch, I think the touch bar as an extension of the iPad screen and that experience is something that could fit quite well here.
That is a divisive pick, Sigmund. You just made a lot of people very angry.
I know.
And another group of people very happy. I have to say, I had one of the Touch Bar MacBook Pros. I thought the Touch Bar was a really great idea, and it was just never fully baked. And I wish Apple had, invested more into it and gotten it there, because I think it could have been a great addition to the MacBook line. And I could definitely see it being a great addition to the iPad line as well. I'm dubious on whether or not it's actually going to come, and I wonder about battery life impact on the iPad. If it did come and was being lit up, they'd probably have to optimize that in some way to, make it not eat up the battery. But I love the idea of some kind of modularity at the top of that keyboard where you could change out what it does to fit your needs, whether that's actually a full strip or just the keys themselves could be reconfigured. I love that idea, and bringing that to the Magic Keyboard on the iPad would be huge. Now, this is where I'm going to diverge from your prediction. This is where our lists actually are in conflict with each other, which is kind of fun. But I'm actually going to predict that the Magic Keyboard for iPad will bring a function row. I've been a user of the Magic Keyboard for the iPad since it came out, and the thing I've wanted most on it from day one was those function keys. Even if they had to be underneath where the iPad kind of hangs over, I would have been willing to reach under and mess with them under there. But I think that with this second take on the Magic Keyboard that we seem to be getting, I feel like that's a lesson Apple has learned and that they're going to bring those function keys back. So not quite as ambitious as bringing back the touch bar, but I do believe we're going to get function keys on the Magic Keyboard.
But, the more you think about the touch bar, the more you want it, right?
Oh, of course. Of course. I think the ideal world, again, would be like they're keys, but they're reconfigurable and you can put a little icon in them so that you can feel them and get that tactile part, but you could also reconfigure them. If that happens, how about we just agree we both get the point?
Yeah, I love it. Honestly, any kind of modularity, because I think that's the one thing that I really loved about the touch bar was that it took on different forms depending on the task that you were on. But with Final Cut Pro and Logic already there and the possibility of more Pro apps on iPad OS, it's just something I'd love to see. So I think either way, we're going to be very, very happy. Function keys or touch bar. Let's talk about the Apple Pencil. Because how many Apple Pencils do we have right now?
We have so many Apple Pencils, Sigmund, it's hard to even keep up with. I think the original Lightning one still out there somewhere. We got the Apple Pencil 2, which is the current one for the iPad Pros and the iPad Air. And then we've got the Apple Pencil parentheses USB-C. Didn't get a generation number. It's kind of its own thing. And that was the happy medium to make the Apple Pencil work with the 10th gen iPad, which doesn't have the ability to connect magnetically to the Apple Pencil. So it plugs in with the wire, and then when you're done charging it, you put the cap back on and it can still magnetically attach. It just doesn't connect to the iPad that way. Really interesting place for the Apple Pencil, and I'm hoping we get a little bit of clarity in the lineup here at this next event.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic tool for artists. I think it's great for, just scribbling notes, that kind of thing, which is mainly what I use it for, unless I'm doing a little bit of work on Procreate on the artwork for this show. But one person that really has kind of shown off what you can do with the iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil to quite a degree. I think just before lockdown, there was a full exhibition of his work specifically on iPad Pro and Apple Pencil. Is the work of David Hockney, who also worked with Apple last Christmas at the Battersea headquarters in London with some incredible work that was projected on top of the Battersea Towers. And so I'm imagining that the Apple Pencil is introduced rather than someone in charge of the product, but by artists, including Sir David Hockney. So that is my fourth regular pick. I will say I'm really excited to see what they do with the Apple Pencil this time round. We've heard rumours of tactile like buttons, or even maybe a squeeze like you have when you're pausing or playing on your AirPods Pro on the tips there. We've also heard rumours of possible functionality with Apple Vision Pro for 3D like sketches, which would blow my mind. I'm not too sure how they would go about that, but there are patents floating about online which are very, very interesting indeed. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but the future is always bright, and I'm very, very excited for this next generation. Before your final regular pick, are there any things that you feel the Apple Pencil lacks, or you want to see come to, or you want to see come this generation?
Well, my use of the Apple Pencil is very similar to yours, where it's more for productivity things than artistry. So I may not be the best person to be making recommendations on the Apple Pencil, but I think that rumor of some kind of haptic feedback is very interesting. Some way of knowing that you're doing what you want to do with the Apple Pencil. That's something that I always struggle with. I'm not an artist. I don't work with pens and pencils all the time. And so just knowing that I'm doing what I want to do, that it's making that connection and really performing the act that I want it to, I think some haptic feedback would really help with that, helping me feel more confident using it. So I'm a fan of that rumor, and I would love to see that come to the Apple Pencil. As far as my prediction, though, I'm going to get a little more basic as far as just how it works. But the question is, of course, if the camera goes to the long edge on the iPad, that's also where the pencil is supposed to connect and charge. So how is that going to work? I don't know how it's going to work, but my prediction is that the new Apple Pencil will charge magnetically and it won't require a cable like the Apple Pencil USB-C does. I feel like that Apple Pencil was a bit of a stopgap or a cost-saving measure for the lower-end iPad. I really feel like now that we have with the Apple Pencil 2 and have had for so long that ability to connect and charge wirelessly, I don't think people are going to be willing to go back to using a wire when it comes to artists and people who use the iPad Pro in their daily work. So I think there has to be some way, I don't know what it is, but I think there has to be some way for Apple to make the new Apple Pencil connect and charge magnetically without requiring a wire.
Could it be a left or right alignment? But that would look strange, right?
I've thought about so many different options, putting it on the shorter edge or putting it on one end or the other, or just offsetting the magnets so that the pencil could still sit in the middle, but it kind of sticks to one side or the other. I don't know if that would throw off the weight of actually using it though, when you're drawing and making art. So I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'll be very interested to see if this prediction does come true. Once iFixit gets a hold of it, I'll be very interested to see what that little part of the iPad looks like, how they make it work. But I'm confident that they can figure it out.
Now, beyond hardware, well, actually, we're going to stick with hardware for a second. This is where it gets interesting because this is our out there picks. And I have 2 out there picks listed. And I'm about to choose one on the spur of the moment because I had 2 that were very, very different. The first is hardware related and the second is software related. And I think if we think about the upcoming iPad announcements, there's a lot of hardware announcements that are going to go, but is that going to be enough to tell the story of what this next generation of iPad Pro can do? And if, for a lot of people, this fills the gaps for what they feel is lacking in the iPad experience. So I'm going to tell you the one pick that I'm not going with, but I think may just happen, and that is a new dock kit mounting accessory that allows the iPad to follow you around. I think that's something that we could possibly see at this event, and maybe later we see a standalone product that does the same thing but is fixed in place, and that might be the 12.9-inch mini LED display device that Ross Young was talking about and alluding to this week. But what I'm going to go with is a software pick, and that is that we see some deeper integration for iPad Pro on a software side and bring back a favorite but specific for iPad setups, and that is iPad to iPad universal control introduced in a new SKU of iPad OS 17 right at the end before we get to WWDC. Because if you think about last year in the lead up to WWDC, I think we got quite a number of announcements that weren't going to make the cut because WW was going to be so packed as it is. I wonder if this is a time where we see quite a few software announcements that, of course, give us hints of what's to come. And some of these bigger details, like being able to have multiple iPads in a setup where, for example, one screen could be your viewer for video editing, the other screen could be your video color wheels, for example, and that kind of thing, or your timeline on Final Cut. And I think that would also mimic the way that Apple Vision Pro works, right? In Vision OS, we have multiple iPads, and this will be like the physical version of that. That's what I'm really hoping for. Of course, that would be kind of crazy because you're selling someone on a 5 iPad Pro setup on their desk. But if you've got a team of people and they're all working towards one goal, but then you can combine all of those iPads into something quite spectacular to get work done in a pro environment, I think that's a good story that Apple could tell. And so that is my risky pick. And then I know it's a risky one.
I am one of those weirdos who carries multiple iPads and who would use this feature from day one. Absolutely. I would love iPad to iPad universal control. I've wished for this for quite some time. And I wonder if they brought this to iPad OS, if they might also be able to bring it between iPad OS and Vision OS, kind of the way that it works with the Mac now, where you could bring the screen up and have the cursor go between the two seamlessly. That would be incredible as well. So you've got my mind reeling, Sigmund. And again, even though we're in competition with each other, you're giving these picks that I just want to come true. So I'm kind of conflicted here. Now for my out there pick, I want to shift gears just a little bit because, as we know, in the past, spring has often been the time for Apple to make services announcements. We had the event several years ago where there was no new hardware. It was just services, and that was actually a really cool, different thing that Apple did, and I loved that. I'm a big fan of the different services that Apple offers, and I'm always interested to see what they're going to do next. And so we haven't heard any rumors about any services coming to this event, and it's hard to predict when Apple's going to roll those out because they can kind of do it whenever they want. But for my out there pick, I'm going to predict that a new paid Apple service or tier of an existing service is announced at this event. And so I've got a few ideas of what this could possibly be, but I don't know for sure. Again, there's no solid rumors here, but of course, we've heard rumblings in the past about an ad-supported tier of Apple TV Plus. And while I personally would not partake in that, I prefer the ad-free services. I know a lot of people do prefer to pay less for an ad-supported service, and so it may bring some new people into the fold. So I could see them doing that. I feel like Apple Arcade is in a place now where they could offer a higher tier service. I honestly thought they might do this when the Apple Vision Pro rolled out and they started adding all these spatial games. I've been really impressed with how many spatial games have come to Apple Arcade, and it's just included with the service that you're paying for. I feel like if they had a handful of those on the back burner ready to go, they could introduce that as a higher tier to kind of get people paying a little bit extra for those games that I can imagine probably take quite a bit more development work to bring over to Apple Vision Pro. Or the other option, we've heard rumors in the past, it's been a minute, but we heard that at one point Apple was working on some kind of health-related service when it comes to combining data in your health app as well as mindfulness and kind of mental health, some kind of AI coaching thing that they were working on to kind of help people improve their health and mental well-being, and nothing ever came of that. But again, these services can kind of pop up out of the blue because they're a lot easier to keep a secret, I feel like. And so we could see something there as well. I don't know for sure. This is a little bit of wish casting, Sigmund, because like I said, I'm a huge fan of Apple services, and this is the time of year when they have rolled out service announcements before. I loved a couple years ago when they just randomly surprised us with a huge update for Apple Card out of nowhere at a spring event. I'm not predicting that this time because of just kind of where Apple Card is at and kind of some changes there behind the scenes. But if they have something in the services department, I'd be very excited, and I'd get 3 points. So that's not a bad deal either.
I think on the services side, I could imagine that we get some announcements with some artificial intelligence enhancements to Final Cut Pro and maybe even to Logic. And that way Apple are able to tell that story, which we're kind of expecting from this event. If you look closely at the invite, it does spell out AI on the right-hand side as well.
Oh.
So there's definitely something there, I think. Like, for example, speech to text and other editing enhancements in Final Cut Pro, where you could just ask, for example, for a car and it would bring up all of your clips with cars in it. That kind of thing, which isn't available right now. I think that could be a good story that they could tell, which wouldn't have to wait for WWDC, because it is linked specifically to the service. So I definitely think there's going to be some service announcements. I don't think it's the time for an ad-supported tier of Apple TV+. I think if anything, we'll get that in September, especially when a Pro device is at the focus of this event. So I think another good set of predictions. Thankfully, the answer to none of these was Killers of the Flower Moon. So I think we've both got a really good chance here. But I'm going to say it now. If the touch bar returns, I'm going to be very, very happy. And I know some people are going to be absolutely furious with me. Could you imagine, after all of this time of waiting for function buttons, that's what you end up getting? I would love it. I know some people will not.
It would be truly amazing, Sigmund. And honestly, I am low-key crossing my fingers that it happens now just to see the reactions. But we don't have long to wait to find out if our predictions are coming true, because once again, Apple's Let Loose event is coming up this Tuesday, May 7th at 7 a.m. Pacific.
Very cool. And of course, you can read and follow all of our coverage over at macstories.net. It's going to be a very, very exciting week that week over on the website. Now, this past week, of course, saw Mac Stories celebrate 15 years of independent Apple insight from Federico Viticci and friends. And of course, by reading, listening, and interacting, you support our work on the site. You probably know that this show joined Mac Stories at the beginning of the year, and both of us contribute on a regular basis elsewhere on the site, which also offers a family of podcasts, but also Club Mac Stories, an extension of everything we do at Mac Stories, offering more of the same, but in the best possible way. More app coverage and in-depth stories about Apple and everything surrounding it through weekly and monthly newsletters. We've got club-exclusive automations, discounts and giveaways, extended episodes of some of our podcasts, alongside a Discord community where you can connect with a smart group of people who share your interests. Not only that, Devon, live audio events, special club-only articles, and more. It is, of course, the perfect way to get the most out of everything we do over at Mac Stories. There are 3 membership levels, each with its own set of perks, and because memberships start at just $5 a month, it's easy and affordable to give Club Mac Stories a try. You can, of course, explore all of the options available and find the plan that's right for you. Just visit plus.club today. Lots going on, again, at Mac Stories and over on the Club Discord. Always really interesting to see people's reactions to what is announced, to see if some of their predictions over on the Discord came to pass as well. It's always an exciting time. Now, of course, we know we've got iPads in the future, but we need to give a little bit of love to some other devices. Of course, the HomePod and the HomePod Mini have been available for some time in America and the UK, but these products slowly roll out to other countries, and so we will see HomePod and HomePod Mini available for purchase in Malaysia, Thailand, and Turkey on Friday, May the 10th. So not too long to wait, just over a week away. But also coming a little bit earlier in May, at least in the US to start off with, are Beats' new offerings, including the Solo 4 and the Solo Buds. I know this is something that you always look forward to, being that you're not a massive fan of AirPods Max. This is kind of the alternative. Tell us about them and your thoughts.
Just to be clear, I love the AirPods Max. They just hurt me. So I had to send them back. But this definitely seems like a viable alternative for me. The Beats Solo 4 are coming May 2nd from Beats, available for $200. They're on-ear headphones available in matte black, slate blue, and cloud pink. They sport 50 hours of battery life and a custom Beats chip, so not an Apple H series chip, but a custom Beats chip to make them compatible with both Apple devices and Android devices. They feature personalized spatial audio, Siri activation, and audio sharing. And there's 3 different options for listening. You can listen wirelessly over Bluetooth, or you can do wired audio via USB-C or 3.5 millimeter jack. So however you like to listen, these headphones are ready to go. Now the thing about these that might make them work for me is that they don't feature active noise cancellation, so they don't have to have quite as much clamping pressure. That's the thing that gets me about on-ear and over-ear headphones that have active noise cancellation. So yeah, these look very exciting, and I mean, for $200 for a pair of on-ear headphones from Beats that are wireless, this really seems like an awesome offering. I love what Beats does. I'm so happy that Apple continues to invest in Beats and allow them to do their thing, because what they're doing is so cool and obviously trendy. You see Beats everywhere, especially when it comes to athletes and people in that realm. So these look awesome, and I'm really excited to hear more about them when they do come out on May 2nd. The Solo line from Beats is expanding, though. They're not just going to be on-ear headphones. They're also going to be in the form of the Beats Solo Buds. These are coming in the U.S. early June for $80. They come in a variety of colors, including matte black, storm gray, arctic purple, and transparent red. That red color looks awesome, Sigmund, if you've seen the pictures. They sport 18-hour battery life and the smallest case of any earbuds that Beats has ever shipped. Now, the reason the case is so small is because it doesn't include a battery. So the case is only for transporting and charging the buds. The buds themselves have 18-hour battery life, but once you deplete that, the case is not going to help you. You have to plug it in via USB-C to recharge them. Now, 5 minutes of charging will give you an hour of listening time, so if you're in a bind, you can always charge them up very quickly. These support both Find My and Google's Find My device network, so again, they play nice with both sides of the smartphone world, which is great. And again, they feature no active noise cancellation, which some people that's disappointing. For some people, that's a feature, and it gets the price down. I mean, $80 for these wireless earbuds from Beats. That's, again, just an awesome offering. I've always been a fan of the Solo line. I've had several pairs of Solo headphones over the years. Always had a great experience with them, and it's really cool to see them coming down to the Buds now.
I gotta say, like, when the Apple TV first came out and there was no over-ear headphones and AirPods didn't exist, I had a pair of Beats Solo 2s, I think, in matte black, and I paired those to my Apple TV, and I loved them for a while, but I also had an issue with clamping pressure. At the time, they were quite rigid. I think they've made some improvements ergonomically since Beats was acquired by Apple. And really, what's happening from an audio perspective over at Apple is always very, very impressive. So whilst these won't be for me, I will want to try both just to get the experience and see where things have kind of moved on, because again, I love my noise cancellation. I hadn't even thought, whilst looking at these press releases earlier today, about the fact that some people don't like that experience, and it's actually quite a detriment to them. So, and why would you want to pay for something you don't use, right? So it's fantastic on that front. Now, the product that I think we're both waiting for with bated breath has yet to be announced. And that is, of course, the new Beats Pill Plus speaker previewed by LeBron James on his way to a recent game. Hopefully we'll hear more about that product soon. When there is news, of course, you'll hear it here on Magic Rays of Light, and I will be getting one of those for sure. Will you be ordering either of these, the Beat Solo 4 or the Solo Buds?
I have to say that Solo 4 is tempting. I think it might end up on my birthday wish list this year. I haven't had a pair of on-ear or over-ear headphones in quite some time, and I'd be very interested to see how that fits back into my life for sure.
Well, let's take a shift, Devon, and talk. And before we get into Apple original news, let's talk app news. And this kind of ties into Apple TV and the way we spend our pastime. But Sofa, with its full version now available, it's kind of expanding beyond the realm of media and entertainment. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, Sofa, the downtime organizer. It's been around for quite some time. I've used it for a long time. I'm sure you've used it as well, Sigmund. But this update is a huge one, as you said, in that it really opens up the world of what you can track with Sofa. And the way that it does that is with custom categories. And so now, rather than being limited to the categories that have been offered in Sofa before, TV, movies, podcasts, books, that kind of thing, now you can just create a category for anything that you want. Anything you want to do in your downtime, you can make a category for it. John reviewed Sofa 4 over on Mac Stories, and he gave some examples of things that he's using it for. And there were really interesting ideas for what you can track in Sofa, including places you might want to visit just to have some fun. That's something I would have never thought to track in Sofa before, but it's possible now with these custom categories. The update also includes custom ingredients, so you can make your own metadata for any item that you add. You can add a rating system to give items a rating from 1 to 5 stars. You can add a checkbox to mark something as completed. There's so many different things you can do with ingredients, and I think this is particularly going to be fun for people who use Obsidian and like to add metadata to their notes. Now you can add metadata to your items in Sofa as well. And those ingredients are going to come in handy when you're creating new smart lists, another addition to Sofa 4 that allow you to combine filters to find exactly what you want. So there's all kinds of parameters that you can use to create these smart lists, including these ingredients. So if you want to make a smart list for TV shows that you haven't watched yet, you can create a parameter for watched and then make a smart list of that and quickly be able to see what you need to watch next. There's all kinds of things you can do with ingredients and smart lists, but really what this update is about is making Sofa fit the way you want to use it and add literally anything you want and combine all that data to make the exact setup that you want. You can also pin lists to the top of the screen to get them up higher in that home view, and Sofa now supports the share sheet for adding links. So you can also use it as like a read later solution as well if that's something that you want to do in your downtime. So really just a huge update to Sofa, an app that I've been a fan of for a really long time for not only its design, which is impeccable and continues to be impeccable and simple and easy to use, but also just for the depth of information that you're able to put in there and track. And now it's really just opened up a whole new world of what you can do with Sofa with this newest update.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of custom categories, and I just like the idea of really being able to put anything and everything in there. I am a list person, right? I came across actually an old pad, maybe from like 20 years ago, that was just constant lists of different things that I either wanted to accomplish, different things I wanted to buy, music I wanted to listen to, films I wanted to watch. That was kind of eye-opening, actually, to see what my tastes were back then. And so this is a kind of a document of that as well, if you want it to be, which I think is really, really cool. Now, one thing that is kind of on my list and would be on a custom list is to kind of go back into time, travel to a foreign land, and maybe slay some people that have, done wrong in the past. And well, I'm going to be able to, thanks to Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is far less dangerous and less fantastical. Of course, available Thursday, June 6th on iPhone 15 Pro, iPhone 15 Pro Max, iPad Air and iPad Pro with the M1 chip or later. And it's also going to be free to trial for 90 minutes, and then it's $49.99. This is, of course, the latest AAA game coming to Apple Silicon. Really, really exciting to see that follow on from Resident Evil and Death Stranding and more. So, yeah, really, really cool. I think you wondered where I was going with that intro, didn't you?
I honestly, I'm not familiar with the Assassin's Creed franchise, so I didn't know where you were going with that segue, Sigmund. I'm glad we brought it back around to video games, because I thought I might have just learned something very interesting about you I didn't know before.
Of course, we'll get into time travel a little bit later with a conversation on Constellation. But let's kind of travel into the future, and not too far into the future, because, of course, as things get a little bit more expensive, especially in the world of streaming. Peacock are the latest to rise their prices for both new and existing subscribers. Peacock will increase the subscription for each of its plans by just $2. Currently, Peacock offers an ad-supported plan that costs $5.99 per month, whilst the Premier Plus plan costs $11.99 per month. But the new pricing sees Peacock Premium at $7.99 a month, or $79.99 per year, or Peacock Premium Plus for $13.99 per month, or $139.99 per year. I am a subscriber to Peacock. I get my value out of this, especially when it comes to sports, especially when it comes to WWE. Of course, things may change there with the premium live events, I think eventually making their way to Netflix as well as the weekly shows. I think that's forthcoming. But yeah, Peacock wanting an extra $2 each month, kind of going along with everyone else, wanting more money. Streaming continues to get more expensive, Devon.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. And of course, the risk with these moves is that it makes users consider, well, do I really want to go to that next step, or can I walk away from this streaming service? I had that conversation with myself when I saw this news. I'm a Peacock subscriber as well. But of course, the thing about it is that the content is there and you want to have access to it. And so you keep paying for it. NBC moved all of their next day shows out of Hulu and into Peacock last season, and that's why I became a subscriber. And now they're taking it a step further with one of the shows that my wife watches on their Law and Order Organized Crime is actually going to become a Peacock original, or at least that's the rumor. It's going to go off of NBC and actually just be on Peacock. So yeah, I'm in with Peacock for the long haul as well, but it's one of those services that I think it probably commands the price that they're setting for it if you're getting that value out of it, which I certainly am.
One thing I would commend Peacock on, and NBC on, is that they at least make their original shows available pretty quickly, actually, in the TV app for purchase, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah, Peacock prices going up, but yeah, I think I'm staying with them. I'm sticking with it for now.
Staying in the world of streaming, someone who's not sticking around, Sigmund, is Paramount Global CEO Bob Bakish, who left the company this week. This change in leadership is taking place as the company is in ongoing buyout negotiations with Skydance. That's an interesting name that, of course, our listeners will recognize because of their ongoing deal with Apple TV+. Lots of series and films have come out of that deal. My question is, if this deal with Paramount goes through and Skydance suddenly owns their own streaming service, Paramount+, what's that going to mean for their relationship with Apple and Apple TV+?
Yeah, because there would be a deep conflict of interest there, right? Would Apple still get the high caliber content that they would expect when they signed that deal with Skydance? I would imagine if this is the case and that the negotiations do actually, come to a head and Skydance do take over Paramount Global, I would imagine that would be the end of the deal between Skydance and Apple. I think whoever gets Paramount Global, and of course CBS would be included in that along with Paramount Plus, that's quite a deal. And they've obviously got sporting content that is high caliber, that is worth the bidding. I think they're quite long-term contracts that they have there, as well as, of course, their movie division, back catalogue, and hits such as Frasier, both the original series and the reboot. So there's lots going on there. Yeah, I mean, that's how I see things going. What do you think?
I agree with you. I don't think that deal could continue. Now, of course, ongoing series would be able to continue under that deal, I would imagine. But I don't think we'd see any new original series or films coming from Skydance, which I think has actually been a really great partnership for Apple TV Plus, and they've really benefited from that. So I don't know that Skydance becoming a competitor is the best thing in the world, but we also don't know how this is going to turn out. Paramount Global has been in kind of limbo for quite some time, and I think the CEO leaving might be a sign that things really are about to change, but there's been this question as well, are they even going to stay in the streaming game, or would they maybe move into licensing, which actually could end up being a positive thing for Apple TV Plus if they're able to pick up some of those deals. So very much a wait-and-see situation, but interesting to see the players involved and the impacts that this could have on the streaming landscape down the line. It's hard to know what the future will hold, Sigmund, but we do know about some upcoming Apple originals thanks to trailers that were released this week. The first one being for Hollywood Con Queen. A mysterious figure known as the Con Queen is impersonating powerful female executives in Hollywood, luring victims with the promise of life-changing career opportunities. A journalist and private investigator set out to find the culprit behind the scam.
I get a call from this Hollywood producer.
This is gonna make you a star.
6 days later, I'm on a flight.
Creative professionals were lured overseas on the promise of work by somebody impersonating powerful Hollywood executives.
I had exhausted all of my savings.
$200,
$1,000.
over $1 million.
But it wasn't about money. She wanted to get inside the dreams of people and destroy them.
How do I get out of here? Who do I trust?
She's known as
The Con Queen.
Con Queen.
I ain't the nicest criminal you'd ever know.
This is a 3-part documentary series from Chris Smith, who listeners may recognize from his involvement with Tiger King or the documentary Fire. It's based on the reporting of Scott Johnson. I was not familiar with this story other than just very vaguely hearing about someone who was doing this, Sigmund, but I was really surprised by the depths of this con and the ways that it affected the lives of these people. One of the victims is actually interviewed in the documentary, which I think is a great addition, of course, to what they're reporting on. But this story, it looks really, honestly, captivating, but also quite depressing, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we won't get into the details of it. We'll leave it to the documentary because we want to learn so much ourselves. But it's kind of sick and actually quite sadistic, the lengths to which this con goes and the breadth as well. This is an international plot that is far-reaching. Of course, it emanates from Hollywood, but this goes far and wide.
Well, we'll learn more, but the story will go far and wide when it debuts next Wednesday, May 8th on Apple TV+.
The other trailer that we got this past week, Devon, is, of course, The Big Cigar. Something, and we've talked about this so many times, especially in the casting segment of this very podcast. The 6-episode drama tells the incredible true story of Hollywood revolution meeting social revolution. It's a wild caper about Black Panther founder Huey P. Newton escaping from the FBI to Cuba with the assistance of famed producer Bert Schneider in an impossibly elaborate plan involving a fake movie production that goes wrong every way it possibly can.
The story I'm about to tell you is how I, Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther Party founder, was set free into a prison.
The FBI has been pursuing Huey Newton for years. They saw the programs worked and change was happening. We are trying to stop an enemy of the state.
A massive nationwide manhunt is now underway.
They're expecting you at every crossing.
Hey, that's why I'm leaving the country.
You're gonna need disguises, transportation.
You're the hotshot producer, man. Produce this.
We got hair, makeup, wardrobe.
What movie are we talking about?
The Big Cigar.
Devon, I cannot wait to hear what your thoughts on this first look, really, at a show that we've been highly anticipating. Stars Andre Holland, Alessandro Nivola, and Tiffany Boone. And I can't believe, just through watching what we've seen, that this is a story based in truth, because it just seems so out there, so elaborate, and a bit of a disaster movie in some ways.
It's one of those stories that you honestly just couldn't make up, right? It's pretty incredible what these people were able to do. And I think this is going to be a really fun ride to see how they were able to pull it off and get Huey P. Newton to safety. It looks like it's going to have some laughs along the way as well. I love that joke at the end of the trailer. That's what they call you after they arrest you. I thought that was great. But I am excited to learn more about this story. And of course, I love the civil rights angle of it as well. I think that makes it a story that's worth retelling, not only in that it's interesting, but also that the people involved were fighting for change and trying to make the world a better place. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. It looks like it's going to be a good time. It debuts Friday, May 17th on Apple TV+.
Well, from trailer talk to release news, and there is a ton of release news, Devon. It's just kept coming this week. And we kick off things with the long-awaited animated adventure series, Wandler, which we've been waiting for, I don't know, years at this point. Well, we'll have to wait not too much longer, because it will premiere globally on Friday, June the 28th. It's the first installment of the anticipated animated adventure trilogy from Skydance Animation, which is based on the New York Times best-selling book series The Search for Wandler by Tony DiTerlizzi. The epic trilogy premieres with an adventure-packed 7-episode season, showrun and executive produced by Bob Scanaway, and features a star-studded voice cast including Janine Mason, Emmy Award nominee Terry Hatcher, Emmy Award winner Brad Garrett, and Gary Anthony Williams, among others. The upcoming futuristic coming-of-age story follows a 16-year-old girl on an epic journey with her robot caretaker and a cantankerous blue alien. So, really looking forward to this. I don't think we've seen anything from Skydance Animation since Luck. And then before then was the short Blush, which was amazing.
Right, and that deal is over now, so I wasn't even sure if we'd see one. I thought it might have gone the same way as Spellbound, which unfortunately we're not going to see, but very excited that this series is coming our way and that it's the first of a trilogy, so we can expect to spend a lot of time in Wandler over the coming years on Apple TV+. Now, coming August 9th to Apple TV+ is The Instigators, following a limited theatrical run starting on August 2nd. The upcoming feature stars Casey Affleck and Matt Damon, starring as a duo returning to their Boston roots in a buddy comedy action heist flick inspired by classics including Midnight Run and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Directed by Doug Liman, who last worked with Damon on The Bourne Identity, this one sees Matt Damon switch up Jason Bourne for Rory, a desperate father who reluctantly joins forces with Kobe, an ex-con, to pull off a robbery of the ill-gained earnings of a corrupt politician. I think somewhere along the way they somehow involved one of their therapists as well. This is going to be an interesting story, and we get a first look at it. We'll link that in the show notes.
We'll also get to see Presumed Innocent, which is based off of a film that I really, really enjoyed back in the day. But it's coming a couple of days earlier than expected, as the series has been moved to Wednesdays, with the premiere set for June 12. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal in the lead role of Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rusty Savage. The series takes viewers on a gripping journey through the horrific murder that upends the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office when one of its own is suspected of the crime. So I think this is going to be really interesting. Of course, touches on some things that we talked about earlier this year with Criminal Record, but obviously from a British perspective. This rendition of Presumed Innocent will be really interesting to see how it's kind of updated and brought forward to modern times. So, yeah, looking forward to this one. And finally, when it comes to release news, not confirmed news, but exciting news nonetheless, Blu-ray.com forum member Mifune Fan reported last week that Ted Lasso will be released on Blu-ray this summer. Warner Brothers is planning to release what is a complete edition of the series that includes all 3 seasons, though of course the future of the show is still unknown. The Blu-ray collection is planned to release July 29th in Europe and on July 30th in North America. We'll leave a link in the show notes to the upcoming Amazon listing, which is expected to go up soon, but has yet to go live at the time of this recording. But of course, as soon as it does go live, I think that's 2 confirmed pre-orders amongst just the hosts of this podcast, and I'm sure many listeners.
For sure. We love to see Apple Originals coming to physical release. Ted Lasso especially, I think, is going to be a popular buy when it comes out in July. Moving to in production, Production Weekly reports that For All Mankind Season 5 will begin shooting this July in Los Angeles. No reports on when the spin-off series Star City will begin filming, but I can't wait to hear more about that one. I just have to bring it up because I'm so excited for it, Sigmund. Production Weekly also notes that Silo Season 3 is in the works. But wait, Sigmund, we haven't seen Season 2 yet, but someone else has. That someone else is, of course, creator, novelist, and executive producer Hugh Howey, who took to Threads on Monday to share the news. Does that mean we get to see Season 2 in the fall-winter alongside the return of Severance?
I hope so. The possibility is looking good though, right?
I think so. That would be an incredible lineup. I can't wait to see more of Severance and Silo. Pairing those two together, that would make for quite a fall-winter lineup on Apple TV+. I'm very happy at the possibility of seeing those towards the end of this year. Moving into casting news, Neuromancer has found its lead. Masters of the Air's Callum Turner will star as Case in the adaptation of William Gibson's novel about a damaged, top-rung super hacker who is thrust into a web of digital espionage and high-stakes crime with his partner Molly, a razor girl assassin with mirrored eyes, aiming to pull a heist on a corporate dynasty with untold secrets. And the cast of Mayday, Skydance's action-adventure film led by Ryan Reynolds and Kenneth Branagh, has expanded, with Maria Bakalova, Marcin Doroskinski, Level Adams Gray, and Clark Johnson coming aboard.
And finally, some awards news, Devon. Apple Originals picked up not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 BAFTA Television Craft Awards this past week, including 2 for Slow Horses, Editing Fiction, Sam Williams, and Sound in the Fiction category, alongside 2 for Silo, Production Design for Gavin Burkett and Amanda Bernstein, and Original Music in the Fiction category for Atil Olveson. Potentially, of course, more to come at the BAFTA Television Awards on Sunday, May the 12th, but a great start nonetheless.
For sure. Congratulations to all those winners. You ready to talk about this week's Apple TV releases?
Absolutely. Today's releases, of course, is led by our highlight of the week, the return of Acapulco with Season 3. New episodes, of course, join from Loot and the Big Door Prize with the penultimate episode of Palm Royale, which I'm frothing at the mouth to talk about, but we'll have to wait just a little longer. On Thursday, we see the week's Apple Arcade releases, including a slight chance of Saw Blades Plus, an intense 8-bit high score chaser, Dicey Dungeons Plus, a deck-building roguelike where you play as a giant walking dice, fighting your way through a dungeon, and Summer Pop Plus, a vacation-themed match-free style game. Of course, there's also recent updates to catch up on, including Puyo Puyo Puzzle Pop's first update, adding 6 new characters and co-op play, Cooking Mama Cuisine's Mother's Day event featuring strawberries, and updates to Stitch, Bloons TD Battle 2 Plus, Fruit Ninja Classic Plus, Lego Duplo World Plus, and Zookeeper World, which is definitely one that I've heard if you start playing, it just sucks all of your time. So you have to be really careful on what you choose on Apple Arcade, because they are addicting for sure. On Friday, we see new episodes of Sugar and Franklin. Those episodes are quickly followed by a night of baseball. Friday Night Baseball returns with San Francisco Giants at Philadelphia Phillies at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Or you could switch over to Toronto Blue Jays at Washington Nationals, which plays at the same time. Of course, you do have multi-view if you want to switch between both, which is fantastic. And then on Saturday and Sunday, you can continue the sports coverage on Apple TV and the Apple TV app with MLS Season Pass as it continues another action-packed season of Major League Soccer. And by the time you've got through all of the highlights for that weekend, before you know it, it's Tuesday, and we have Apple's Let Loose event at 7 a.m. Pacific in 4K HDR and spatial audio in the TV app. And I will be taking your advice at the beginning of this episode. I will be watching this on Apple Vision Pro in the theatre. Maybe I'll be on Mount Hood. We'll see. We'll fall back on that next week and find out what our experiences were when, of course, we relay that whole event hours after the event happens. Now, lots and lots to look forward to from the world of Apple Originals, Apple Arcade, even an Apple event. But that's not all, is it, Devon?
That's not. This past Monday was International Dance Day, and Apple Fitness Plus trainers got together to celebrate, and they filmed an 11-person dance workout for you to do in celebration of International Dance Day. I love these trainer crossovers where they get multiple trainers from different specialties together to do a workout. And of course, it always looks wild from our point of view, seeing them all packed into the studio like that, but they have so much fun, and I love to see it. So if you're interested in getting your dance on this week and celebrating International Dance Day, do check out that workout linked in the show notes.
Whilst this week might have been International Dance Day on a Monday, every Monday is Mosh Monday in this household. So from mosh to mush, because that's how my brain felt by the end of this season. We are, of course, recapping the first season of Constellation, when a fatal accident occurs on board the International Space Station. A lone astronaut makes the heroic journey back to Earth, only to discover key pieces of her life, including her young daughter, have changed.
I miss you so much.
I miss you too, Mama. Will you be careful out there?
I'm very happy to be back home. But things are different.
Astronauts go through things they don't understand.
Mama?
That's when people come unstuck.
This isn't madness!
I just don't feel like you're my mum.
Constellation is created by Peter Harness, directed by Michelle McLaren, starring Noomi Rapace as Joe, Jonathan Banks as Bud and Henry, James Darcy as Magnus, Julian Luman as Frederick, Henry David as Ilya, William Catlett as Paul, Barbara Sokoa as Irina, and Davina and Rosie Coleman as Alice. Big shout out for those performances specifically. This is a show that we've been waiting to talk about for a long time. Pretty much, I think, from the first couple of episodes, because you could really tell that the style and the very small kind of tidbits and clues were going to make for a very captivating watch. What I didn't realise was how much time I was going to need to be able to process what we got at the end of this season, because the whole season felt like a bit like my brain was melting throughout at every turn. And I think I watched the show 3 times, but outside of episode order before getting to the finale, because I was really trying to piece things together, and that might have been the worst way of doing this. To an extent. I think there is a certain point where you have to stop because you just start to get even more confused. Now, of course, this is a spoiler conversation, and I should say that ahead. If you don't want to have things spoiled for you, skip to the next chapter. But let me just make you aware that what we're going to talk about out of context isn't going to spoil anything, because this series is so vast, so complex, and honestly quite confusing that I don't think this can be spoilt for you, because I don't think either of us quite know everything that went on come the end. I found it to be really challenging on multiple levels, but equally it was rewarding. You know, you've got quantum entanglement, superpositioning, and also, I guess, a super complex series. What did you think of this first season of Constellation, Devon?
I will say this first season, I would call it an experience. I agree with you. It was challenging, not in the sense of not enjoying it, but trying to follow the various plot lines and timelines and really piece together what's happening. It was an exercise, a mental exercise, I would probably say, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I loved the way it gradually revealed its mysteries, so you could kind of put those pieces together to the extent that you're able to, at least on your own. We knew from the trailer that, of course, Numi Rapace's character Jo was going to come back down to a very different Earth than what she left, but I don't think either of us anticipated how complex that storyline could get, because she realizes that something's not right, but she doesn't really know what it is, and we don't fully know either. And as we're watching her storyline play out, we're also seeing these glimpses of other people's experiences that are kind of just completely out of time and out of context, and we're not really given exactly where it fits into the story until closer to the end. And so we don't really know, well, what Earth are we even on? And are these timelines connected? And is this person in this scene the same as they are in this scene? Do they know what this person knows? And it really is a puzzle to put together. And I would say by the end, it's satisfying in a way if you can kind of get a handle on it. But at the same time, I agree with you that I don't fully still completely understand everything that I watched.
What I thought was really interesting is we both kind of came out of this with different perspectives, because what you're about to talk about is just not something that I saw at all in this series. That is what the real life counterpart for Jo is possibly experiencing.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a stretch, but I've been thinking about this since I saw the trailer, because there is an experience that some people have that is not the exact same as what Jo experiences, but it is similar in a sense. So Jo travels between universes, right? And she replaces the version of herself in an alternate world. And so when she goes down and meets her family, it's not her family. They look like her family, but it's not really them. They don't have the same memories and experiences or the same color car, anything like that. And so what it made me think of was something that I learned about when I was studying psychology. It's called Capgras syndrome, and it is absolutely terrifying, but this is a real thing that has happened. It's rare, but if you experience a certain type of brain damage to the emotional processing part of your brain, the part of your brain that gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling when you look in the eyes of somebody that you love, if that part is damaged and you're no longer able to experience that feeling, then you can become convinced that everyone around you has been replaced by imposters.
Wow.
And it is a truly sad experience, obviously, for those who undergo it and their families. But it's something that ever since I learned about it, I've feared. It's an irrational thing to fear, but it is one of those scenarios that plays out in my head sometimes. What if I am transported to a world where everyone I love is replaced by imposters, or where I'm replaced and I'm not who I really think I am? And so this series really spoke to that part of my mind that fears that. And I think that really, as much as, again, it's a rare experience, not something that a lot of people go through, seeing Jo go through this does give you a glimpse of what that might be like. Seeing the experience that Jo goes through and the way that the people around her try to explain away her experience, I would call devastating. Seeing, her, she starts to question her own sanity, and everyone around her questions her sanity and tries to kind of sedate her into just accepting the world around her. Of course, it turns out to be a huge cover-up, right? Which, it always does in these types of scenarios on TV. But it really is an emotional experience to go through this journey with her and see what it's like to know something is not right, but not be able to place it, and also no one really believes you. Now, the interesting turn for me, at least throughout the series, was that the person who really figures out what's going on is Alice, and she's able to bridge the gap with that tape recorder, which is so fascinating to me. Her as a character, I think seeing her journey, again, she's going through this as well, realizing that the person who she thinks is her mom is not really her mom. It looks like her, but it's not. And eventually putting the pieces together to the point that she's able to communicate across that divide and get in touch with her alternate Alice, again, played by twin sisters. Just an incredible move by the casting director there. And kind of figure out that, okay, in this other world, this Alice thinks her mother has died when really her mother has gone to another Earth and is now taking the place of my mother. It's just, again, it's hard to explain because it's just such an odd series of events. But seeing it play out and seeing Alice's kind of role in putting that together, it really was just an incredible performance by Davina and Rosie Coleman. Now, eventually, the people who understand what's going on, Alice and Joe, seem to come to some kind of acceptance of the situation by the end of it, and just kind of agree that we understand that you and I are not who we thought the other person was, but we're just going to have to live this life now because it's where we're at. And to me, that really leaves us to wonder what we do in a similar situation, much like Swan Song did, making you wonder, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And maybe I'm weird for thinking that because, again, this is a scenario that I've played out in my mind before. It's a fear that I have, but it makes you wonder, if you were in a situation where you realize that the world you're living in is not the one that you knew, what would you really do about it? Joe doesn't have the technology or the science capabilities to try to get back. I guess maybe we'll see that eventually, but really, I mean, she's just kind of stuck where she's at, and she could continue to fight against that system and I guess probably locked up in an asylum for the rest of her life, or she can accept this quasi form of her family that she's found and fall into the life that she's landed in. But I think it's an interesting question. I don't know what I would do, but it's interesting to ponder, I think, what you would do in that situation.
I feel like I was in a similar situation when I was a kid. I'll explain. I used to open up my bedclothes, a duvet, right, and get in to the duvet cover, and then I'd seal it up. And one time I went to sleep that way and had a dream, and I don't know if you've ever been in a dream within a dream within a dream, right? Where you wake up, but you're actually still in a dream, right? Well, I had that, but I also had it where I was getting out of a cover, but then I was still in a cover, right? Each time I woke up, but I was still dreaming.
Wow.
That's the experience that I felt like I was having watching this show. And the more I went down the rabbit hole on this show and started looking at some of the videos and some of the dates across the different episodes, the more I thought, I'm in the in-between here, and there isn't just two universes, but possibly a third, unless there's some like crazy continuity errors here. Because when you look on the season finale, you've got the ultrasounds that, of course, shows patterns similar to that made by the Cow device. But the ultrasound date is also marked February 1st, 2020, which would have been before the events of Joe's space mission. Then Joe is questioned in episode 3 about that mission on the 14th of October 2021. So that gives you an idea on whether dates don't quite align. Then Paul's space mission footage is dated the 14th of October 2023. And right at the end on that final episode, the FBI say Bud shot Paul on November 8th, 2021. None of the dates match up. They all seem to be mirror images of what actually happened. Things seem to be taking place way before. So, for example, Jo is being treated at the facility with Irina before the events of her space mission, but is being treated for how things ended up after her space mission. Paul was in space in 2023, but he was shot in 2021. Do you understand what I mean by this felt like that dream where I was in a dream within a dream within a dream and nothing quite made sense? So I'm going with 3 universes. Peter Harness, however, said that there are 2, but there is a crossing point with the cow device. But does that crossing point mean we're experiencing a potential 3rd?
I think what we're getting at with this whole discussion is that the series was captivating. The whole concept was really interesting and drew us in. But if you can't tell, the finale did not give us all the answers that we were hoping for. I am desperately hoping that this is only a season finale and not a series finale, because I need to know more. There's so many questions that I have. I would say the only real resolution that we got in the season finale was between Bud and Irena. Bud's such an interesting character because he's the only person who seems to be able to travel between the worlds at will somehow. He can body swap purposefully, and we don't fully understand how that happens, but it must be somehow connected to his understanding of the cow. But he actually approaches Irena at dinner and just spells out that he knows that he's from another world, and he knows that she's from another world. And the look on her face when he says that, they don't go any further with how exactly that all plays out. But to me, that was the best part of the finale, because finally someone just said it, right? And it made me feel like we might be moving in the direction of some answers, and then that's not the direction that the finale ultimately went. It was more of an emotional finale, more resolution between Joe and Alice than anything else, which was satisfying in a way, but still, I need to know some things, Sigmund. I need to know, first of all, where did this baby that Joe has come from? Who's the father, right? I need to know that last shot of the season when Joe's corpse comes back to life in her original reality. What's that about? Okay. I need to know which Paul wakes up in the hospital after being shot by Bud, because there's a potential for another body swap there where maybe he swapped back to his original world.
Because he when he looks, he's kind of shocked that he has an arm, right?
Yes. And that's your hint that, okay, maybe there's even more body swapping happening than we can even realize. Finally, I have to know, Sigmund, they set this up and they never spelled out how this happened. Someone else was on the International Space Station and had to hit the button to let Joe and Paul detach, right? There's a manual override on the International Space Station that they couldn't press from inside. There's a shadowy figure who appears and helps them get off, and then they look back at the International Space Station and they see this person, but allegedly there was no one else on the space station. So actually, of anything that we've talked about, that might lend itself most to that 3rd universe theory where someone else was somehow getting into that space as well. I don't know. I'm left with a lot of questions, but the thing I will say to the show's credit is I care about the answers. I care enough to watch another season, to be confused for another 8 episodes if I can get some of those answers. And so I would say Constellation is worth checking out. I hope those who checked it out enjoyed it. It's not the kind of one and done show that maybe a lot of us were expecting to get wrapped up at the end, but I'm hopeful that in the future we'll get those answers, because I do think there are answers to those things. We just haven't figured them out yet, and I hope the show will be able to continue and spell them out for us in the future.
This is the kind of show that I really enjoyed the first 7 episodes, thought they were incredible. By the finale, I felt like I'd kind of been thrown totally out of the loop. If you were to represent this show with like a pinboard, right, with pieces of string, I feel like you'd end up with just a ball of yarn, right, like a cat been playing with it. And so I will say I'm very, very excited for a 2nd season. I'm hopeful that it's been renewed and that's what we do get. But also, I feel like I need some spoon feeding in between just to make sure that I'm right on track, because I don't think I'm on track at all. And that pin analogy with the pieces of string, I think, is probably the analogy for this conversation and recap. If you've watched the show, hopefully you've made sense of it. Do get in touch with us. Let us know your theories, and if we are way off point here with Constellation. Of course, no one knows definitively, unless, of course, Peter Harness wants to get in touch and put us straight. That would be fantastic as well. Of course, the first season of Constellation now streaming in its entirety across all of your screens on Apple TV+. I think many watches are going to be needed in different orders. This is definitely a show where watch the first episode and then try and make sense of it in whatever order you prefer. The strangest of recaps that we've had on Magic Rays of Light 3 years in together. But let's move swiftly on to where we end each episode, and that is with our up next picks and highlights of the week. Devon, what have you got for us this week?
This week, I want to recommend a film that I saw on Max recently and really enjoyed. We talked about it when it came to VOD, but we haven't talked about it since then, and that is Wonka. Of course, the origin story of everyone's favorite chocolatier, starring Timothée Chalamet, who did just an incredible job of playing the young version of this character who we've seen in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but playing that really wide-eyed, full of just optimism version of that character, of how he came to be who he was eventually in those later films. I really enjoyed his performance. It's directed by Paul King, who directed Paddington and Sigmund in a series that you just can't get away from, The Mighty Boosh. It also stars Calla Lane as Noodle, a character that I really enjoyed. I thought her performance was great. Hugh Grant plays Lofty, the Oompa Loompa. Can't have Willy Wonka without the Oompa Loompas, right? And they get a little bit of an origin story as well, which is a lot of fun. I loved Keegan-Michael Key in his role. Of course, we see him in Schmigadoon, and he brought some of that same energy to his role here as the police chief, who does a couple of song and dance performances and really does a great job in that comedic role. And then Patterson Joseph, who we've seen in Mosquito Coast and heard his voice in The Velveteen Rabbit. He's hilarious. He plays the head of the chocolate cartel who comes up against Willy Wonka when he's trying to break into the chocolate business. These are the entrenched companies that try to snuff him out and stop him from being able to do what he does. This film, it's family friendly. You can watch it with your kids and the whole family can enjoy it. And I would say it has a little bit of everything. It's got magic. It's got chocolate. It's got original songs by Neil Hannon. And Sigmund, it even has a giraffe. So I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was just a really fun watch. The songs will stick in your head, which is something that I very much appreciate about these kinds of films. The performances were great. And I really just enjoyed getting to see a little bit of backstory on this character, who we all love so much and have seen a lot of later in his life. But to get to see where he comes from, I really enjoyed. So Wonka, streaming now on Max. That's my pick for this week.
Very, very cool. Before my pick, which is also about something you consume, we'll get into that in a minute, here are a couple of highlights. All, I think, of the lighter variety this time round. And this follows on well from your pick, actually, because there's a new documentary, Remembering Gene Wilder, available on VOD this week. It is, of course, the famous actor's career, illustrated by a bevy of touching and hilarious clips and outtakes, never before seen home movies, with narration from Wilder's audiobook memoir, and interviews with a roster of brilliant friends and collaborators like Mel Brooks, Alana Alda, and Carol Kane. Of course, Young Frankenstein is still a film that I'm desperate to see appear on the TV app, either for rental or for purchase. It's one of the all-time greats, and there's a great little segment on his relationship with Mel Brooks during the making of that particular film especially. Yeah, Remembering Gene Wilder on VOD is one of the highlights for this week. The other is something very, very different. It's called The Idea of You. It's on Prime Video, and it's about a 40-year-old single mother called Celine, played by Anne Hathaway, who, while chaperoning her teenage daughter's trip to Coachella, begins an unexpected romance with a 24-year-old Hayes Campbell, the lead singer of August Moon, the hottest boy band on the planet. And I checked out the trailer and I thought, wow, this is absurd, but there's something about this that makes me want to watch it. And the thing that isn't tackled in this is like the real life kind of consequences of this, right? You take your daughter to Coachella to check out like one of her favorite bands ever, and then you end up having the relationship with the lead singer of this boy band. That's a little bit strange, don't you think, Devon?
That is very strange, but it sounds like it would make for a very entertaining film and a horrible experience for someone in real life.
Absolutely. Poor daughter. That is the idea review on Prime Video. But my up next pick is something I'm really looking forward to, because I got to check out Jerry Seinfeld in the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm just a few weeks ago. And Jerry Seinfeld is now in his first ever feature film, which is amazing to me considering how long his career has been. And it's called Unfrosted. It's on Netflix. Set in 1963 Michigan, where sworn cereal rivals Kellogg's and Post race to create a pastry that would change the face of breakfast forever. This marks Jerry Seinfeld's first ever starring role in a film. He's also director and co-wrote the film with Spike Fernstein, Andy Robin, and Barry Marder. It's loosely based on the true story of the creation of Pop-Tarts toaster pastries, which I think I tried twice. Very, very sweet. Definitely a way to wake up in the morning if you're not into coffee. But this retelling includes, of course, a stacked cast, including Melissa McCarthy, Jim Gaffigan, Hugh Grant, Amy Schumer, Peter Dinklage, Christian Slater, Bill Burr, Don Levy, Jack McBrayer, Bobby Monahan as Chef Boyardee, and Maria Bakalova, Beck Bennett, Fred Armisen, Tony Hale, and Dean Norris. Of course, Seinfeld, he's got the pull, and he can get pretty much anyone in on this film. But the trailer looks really fun. Looking forward to checking this out on Netflix later on this week. And that is where we end this week's Magic Rays of Light. Packed episode, predictions, highlights, a confusing recap of Constellation, but a great episode nonetheless.
A great episode indeed, Sigmund. Once again, happy 3 years of podcasting together, and our sincere thanks to everyone who has listened over those 3 years, and for everyone listening to our episode today. We want to hear from you, so be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, where you can leave us a rating and review. You can reach out to us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can send the show an email or an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. We'll be back next week with the premiere of Dark Matter, so until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.